Hi there and welcome. This is a session about bird watching in Cuba and some of the endemic species that you'll see when you go to Cuba. So, I'm Jenny Desmond and I am the owner and founder of Vive Tours. And I lived in Central America in the 90s. I've been doing educational tours to Cuba for 8 years, and now this year we added Colombia. I teach classes on Cuba. Spanish language, Latin food, culture, and wildlife all fascinate me. And I started birdwatching on our tours to Cuba with Roger, our guide. And I'm in Colorado. So, topics in this presentation are why Cuba, who is Roger, our guide, various birds and habitats in western and central Cuba, and what's included in a tour. So, why Cuba? Cuba has 27 unique endemic species of birds. So it's a fascinating place to go bird watching. There are over 370 species of birds in Cuba. There's a variety of landscapes and ecology. Cuba's pretty easy to explore, and they have great conservation efforts going on in Cuba. One of the things that is good and bad is that they have for about 30 years, they've been pretty limited on oil and petroleum. And which the result of that is a lot of organic farming. So rather than using a lot of harsh pesticides made from petroleum, Cuba does a lot of organic farming. So it's really great for healthy wildlife habitats. I love this video, Meet the Spectacular Birds of Cuba. So I would encourage you to jump on YouTube and watch the first 4 minutes of this video created by Carol Turek. And it's a great video. It's not part of this recording because then YouTube would limit my recording because hers is copyrighted. But watch that because you'll see and hear a lot of the birds that I'm talking about in this presentation. So who is Roger? Roger is our Cuban team leader and guide. He's been guiding tours for travelers for nearly 20 years. He has excellent English. He's a birder and photographer, a writer, and a lively storyteller. He's married. He lives in Camagüey. And all the bird photos in this presentation were taken by Roger. So you'll see footage of him today. And whenever I pop to a slide with footage of him, it just starts talking immediately. So don't be surprised. An interesting thing about Roger is that he led tours for Australians in his early years of tour guiding. And so a lot of his English is pronounced with an Australian accent. And so prepare yourself for that. And the volume is kind of low on his videos, and I'm just unable to make that louder. So you might want to keep your volume button handy. I did turn on the closed captioning though. So locations. So when we do bird watching in Cuba on our tours, we have 5 locations that we go to. So we start in Havana, but then we go into Saroa Orchid Gardens in Las Terrazas, into Bañales Valley, Playa Larga and Zapata Swamps, and Cienfuegos and Guanaroca Lagoon. And so I'm going to talk about each of these little areas and what birds you can expect to see there. And here comes Roger.
In Las Terrazas and Saroa, the first thing we could just find is woodpeckers and the dragons. The West Indian woodpecker is actually not endemic, but is what we say is already indigenized. So the subspecies that are here, that's what we call them Cuban West Indian woodpecker or Cuban subspecies, because they're already having in some areas some characteristics that they're changing, a little bit of a difference to the populations that are in the rest of the islands. But you can find them also in some other islands of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. That's the one with a red head. In Las Terrazas and Soroa, the first thing we could just find is woodpeckers
So
and
those are the
truffles.
West Indian woodpeckers, and
The West
keep going. So Soroa Orchid Gardens is an incredible place. Um, it's about 10 acres in size, and it was built in the 1940s, I think. And there, it was a man who brought a bunch of orchids from China, and then now they have really developed it in that there's a lot of hybridization of the orchids that are there, and there's a lot of endemic orchids. And it's just beautiful, and the wildlife loves it. So you'll see amazing birds in that area, and there's waterfalls nearby. So the Cuban trogon is something that I've seen every single time I've been to Cuba. It's not hard to spot if you're looking at all at the birds, even when you're not on a bird watching tour. And it's beautiful. One of the things they like to say about the trogon is that it really shows a lot about the character of Cuba, and thus the national bird of Cuba, in that the trogon can't be caged. It fights and fights and fights. So just like Cubans can't be caged or held back by the U.S. embargo on Cuba, they keep fighting forward. The trogon can't be caged. And it's the colors of the Cuban flag, of course, too. Then we have Las Terrazas. It's only about a 20-minute drive from Soroa Orchid Gardens. And that's where you can expect to see the West Indian woodpecker. And this is an area that was incredibly deforested over the centuries by the colonizers. And so all the mahogany was taken out. And when Fidel Castro came to power in 59, this was an area that he put a lot of Cuban energy into reforesting these mountainsides and bringing back the ecology. And so that's why it's a biosphere reserve. There's a lot of water in that area. It's inland, it's not on the coast. And so it's a great area for birds. And you can see right where it says Artemisa, that's the area where that is. So next we go down to Vinales Valley, and that's about an hour away. Also inland, not exactly on the coast. And there you can expect to see the Cuban pygmy owl and the Cuban toadies. And let me tell you, Cuban toadies are stunning, beautiful, very small birds. You'll see that in that video if you watch that video by Carol Turek on YouTube. I've only seen Cuban toadies twice when I've been in Cuba, and so they're harder to spot. Even, they're abundant in some areas, but they're harder to spot. So I hope that you get to see them when you go. This area, Vinales Valley, is also where Niels Navarro lives. And he is the man who wrote the book on the birds of Cuba. And all of the artwork in there, he's sketched out and drawn all of the birds of Cuba in that book, and then has scientific descriptions of them. This is where he lives. So it also tells you that this is a prime place for bird watching in Cuba, because this man of such great expertise lives there. Okay, so then moving down along the southern coast of the island, we go across here into Palpite and Zapata Swamps, which is a national park. And in Palpite, we visit an ornithologist who cares for the bee hummingbirds in his backyard. So this is the smallest bird in the world. They are absolutely stunning, but they're so petite and so delicate. So, and then Cuban emeralds, of course, love to hang out there too, because there's a lot of hummingbird feeders. And the Cuban emeralds just are beautiful. This is a male in full color. And the hummingbirds are there year round. And a few years ago, we had gone to see, his name is Bernabe. We had gone to see Bernabe, and it was about a month after a hurricane had gone through that part of the island. And so he had caught a bunch of the Cuban bee hummingbirds with a butterfly net, brought them into his house, and had them under a mosquito netting. And he showed me a video on his phone of those little birds flying around under the mosquito netting in his house during the storm, right? They're very delicate. So it was really special that he was able to protect them from this violent hurricane.
The Black Hawks, incredibly, we can see very easily the Black Hawks when we go to Salinas de Britos. They're always around.
Did you have a picture of them? Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's on them. The one that is eating the crab, that has got the reflection in the water, and the very dark one that is like, and there is one that is like brown with patches of white.
Yeah.
That one is the juvenile of that type.
So then near Cienfuegos, we go to the one on Roca Lagoon. And there you are likely to see the yellow-crowned night heron, the white ibis, and the purple gallinule. And what I love about the purple gallinule is it has the really big feet that they have, right? So that they can walk across those lily pads, and they're just super brightly colored, bright red beaks. Just really, really interesting. Not endemic to Cuba, but really special. So, are you interested in joining Roger in Cuba? We do the spring migration tour only once a year. And so this year it's going to be March 5th through 14th. And it is $36.95 for the 10 days in Cuba with almost everything included. So you'll have Roger plus 3 local guides that live in the areas of those natural reserves so they know exactly where the nests are. Where has the Cuban pygmy owl been nesting? We take care of all your travel licenses, your mandatory Cuba health insurance and visas. That's part of what we provide to all of our customers so that it is a legal trip under U.S. law. And you stay 9 nights in Casa Particulares, which are Cuban bed and breakfasts. It includes 17 meals, so almost always at privately owned restaurants. We do whatever we can to help funnel our tourist dollars into the hands of entrepreneurs and biologists and environmental conservation people in Cuba versus the government. We'll have a private air-conditioned ground transportation with our own driver the whole time. Purified water is always available, so bring your favorite water bottle for refills. And then I have a Curious About Cuba educational program that teaches you all about the history, culture, language, food, all these different elements of Cuba on top of this presentation about birds. And that's available on YouTube as well. What's not included, what you're responsible for, is your airfare. That averages about $550 round trip. If you're coming from Denver to Havana, it's round trip. It's easy. You fly through Houston or Miami, and you buy one ticket on American or United or Southwest, and you get there and come back. You'll want to take care of your trip insurance, and I've got a great company that I partner with, so I can give you recommendations. 9 meals are on your own, so you have the ability to kind of go out and do your own thing or stay with a group. And then tips for Roger and the driver, right? We like to reward them for the hard work that they do. The tour is limited to 15 people. So there you've got our contact information, vivemostours.com. The office number is 720-778-0089, or you can email me, Jenny@vivemostours.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you learned something new about the birds of Cuba.